By the time Arthur Miles came back from his doctor's appointment, the flagpole in front of his house was gone. Not lowered, not folded, gone. Only a square patch of disturbed dirt remained beside the walkway, with broken grass around it, and 4 deep marks where a work crew had dragged something heavy across his lawn. His American flag, the same flag he had raised every morning for 11 years, had been taken while he was away. Across the street, Linda Carver stood near the curb with her arms folded, watching him like she had won a contest. Arthur did not shout. He did not run after anyone. He just stood there, one hand holding his medical papers, the other hand trembling at his side. Then he looked at the empty spot where the flag had been, turned slowly, and walked into his house. 5 minutes later, he opened an old wooden box under his bed. Before I tell you how it reached that painful moment, let me know where you are listening from, and if you have ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, a landlord, or anyone who used small rules to make your life harder, share your story in the comments. Like this video, subscribe, and stay with me, because Arthur's quiet reaction was not weakness. It was the beginning of Linda Carver's biggest mistake. Arthur Miles lived in a clean neighborhood called Cedar Hollow, just outside Fort Worth, Texas. It was the kind of place where the lawns were trimmed, the mailboxes matched, and people waved even when they did not really like each other. Arthur's house sat near the corner of Bluebonnet Lane. It was a simple 1-story brick home, with white shutters, 2 rocking chairs on the porch, and a small garden his wife Margaret had planted before she passed. Every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, Arthur came outside with a cup of black coffee in one hand and raised his flag with the other. He never made a show of it. He never played loud music. He never gave speeches. He just raised it slowly, tied the rope, stepped back, and stood still for a few seconds. Some neighbors thought it was sweet. Some barely noticed. To Arthur, it was not decoration. It was memory. That flag reminded him of Margaret, who used to stand beside him in her robe and slippers, smiling like the whole morning belonged to them. It reminded him of men whose names he still carried in his heart. It reminded him that even after pain, loss, war, and age, he had made it home. Arthur bothered no one. He kept his grass cut. He brought in his trash cans before sunset. He paid his HOA dues on time. He waved at kids walking to school, fixed loose fence boards for older neighbors, and never complained when teenagers cut across the edge of his yard. That was why the first letter surprised him. It came on a Tuesday. Arthur found it clipped to his front door in a clear plastic sleeve, even though the mailbox was only 10 steps away. The paper had the Cedar Hollow Homeowners Association logo at the top. Under it, in bold letters, it said, "Notice of Exterior Violation." Arthur adjusted his glasses and read it twice. The letter said his flagpole was not in compliance with updated community appearance standards. It claimed the pole was too tall, too visible from the street, and had not been approved by the design committee. Arthur frowned. The pole had been there since 2013. The old HOA president, Mr. Callahan, had even helped him install it after Margaret got sick. Arthur still remembered Callahan laughing and saying, "Miles, this neighborhood could use a little more backbone." Arthur folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen table. For a long moment, he just looked at it. Then he looked through the window at the flag moving softly in the wind. "Too visible," he whispered. The next morning, Arthur walked to the HOA office near the community pool. It was a small building with beige walls, fake plants in the corner, and a bulletin board filled with pool hours, parking reminders, and warnings about trash bins. Behind the front desk sat Linda Carver. She was in her early 50s, neat and sharp-looking, with short blonde hair, pearl earrings, and a smile that felt more like a lock than a welcome. She had become HOA president only 2 months earlier, after promising to restore order to Cedar Hollow. "Mr. Miles," she said, looking up from her laptop, "I wondered when you would come in." Arthur held up the letter. "I believe there's been a mistake." Linda leaned back. "There is no mistake. That flagpole has been in my yard for years." "I understand that," she said calmly. "But past neglect does not create approval." Arthur stared at her. "Neglect? The previous board let many things slide. I'm correcting that." He took a slow breath. "Mrs. Carver, I'm not trying to cause trouble. That flag means a great deal to me." Linda smiled, but her eyes did not soften. "I'm sure it does. But personal meaning does not override community standards." Arthur's hand tightened around the letter. "It's the American flag," he said. And nobody is saying you cannot fly a flag, Linda replied quickly. You may use a bracket-mounted flag attached to your porch, as long as it meets size guidelines. But that pole is not approved. Arthur was quiet for a few seconds. My wife stood beside that pole the last morning she was able to walk outside, he said. I'm asking you to leave it alone. For the first time, Linda looked slightly uncomfortable, but only for a moment. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, but I have to be consistent. Arthur looked around the office. On the wall behind her was a framed sign that said, "A beautiful community begins with rules." He nodded once. Then I'll speak to the board. I am the board president, Linda said. I know, Arthur replied, but you're not the whole neighborhood. That was the first time her smile disappeared. The letter gave Arthur 10 days to remove the flagpole or submit an application for review. So he filled out the application. He attached a photo of the flagpole, the original installation date, and a short note explaining its meaning. He even wrote, I am willing to discuss reasonable accommodations. 3 days later, the application came back denied. No explanation, just a red stamp across the page. Denied. Non-conforming structure. That evening, Linda walked past Arthur's house with 2 other board members, Dale Foster and Karen Whitcomb. They pretended to inspect the sidewalk, but Arthur could hear them from his porch. It sets a precedent, Linda said. Dale chuckled. Next thing you know, everyone wants a pole, a statue, or a fountain. Arthur looked down at his coffee. Across the street, 15-year-old Sophie Bennett stood beside her bicycle, watching quietly. She lived with her mother in a rental house and usually kept to herself. Her grandfather had died the year before, and Arthur had once seen her sitting on the curb crying after school. Arthur gave her a small wave. She raised her hand, but her eyes moved from him to Linda. The next morning, Arthur found a second notice on his door. This one included a fine, $200. He stared at the number for a long time, not because he could not pay it, but because of what it meant. They were no longer asking. They were pushing. That Friday, Arthur attended the HOA meeting at the clubhouse. About 30 neighbors sat in folding chairs. Linda sat at the front with a binder, a microphone, and the confident posture of someone who expected everyone to obey. When Arthur's name came up, Linda did not call it a flag issue. She called it an unauthorized exterior structure. Arthur stood slowly. My flagpole has been there for 11 years, he said. It has never blocked traffic, never damaged property, and never caused a safety issue. A man in the back nodded. Someone else whispered, Leave him alone. Linda tapped her pen against the table. Mr. Miles, this board respects your service, she said. But we cannot allow emotional arguments to rewrite the rules. The room went still. Arthur's face changed, not in anger but in hurt. Then Sophie, sitting in the back beside her mother, lifted her phone slightly in her lap. Arthur did not notice. Linda did. Her eyes narrowed. This matter is closed, Linda said. If the violation remains after Monday, further action will be taken. Arthur looked at her. What kind of further action? Linda closed her binder. Whatever action is necessary. That night, Arthur sat on his porch until the streetlights came on. The flag moved above him in the dark, quiet and steady. For the first time in years, he felt Margaret's absence so strongly it pressed against his chest. He whispered, I don't want to fight, Maggie. The wind pulled the flag outward, and the rope tapped softly against the pole. Tap, tap, tap. On Monday morning, Arthur had a medical appointment at the VA clinic. He almost canceled it, but his daughter had already called twice that week, reminding him to go. So he raised the flag, locked his front door, and drove away. At 10:42 a.m., a white work truck pulled up in front of his house. Linda Carver stepped out first. Then 2 men with tools walked across Arthur's lawn. And from across the street, hidden behind the blinds of her bedroom window, Sophie Bennett started recording. The 2 men did not look proud of what they were doing. One of them was young, maybe 25, with a work belt hanging low on his waist and sweat already darkening the collar of his gray shirt. The other was older, heavy-set, with a red face and tired eyes. They stood beside Arthur's flagpole, like they had been sent to cut down something alive. Linda Carver stood on the sidewalk with a clipboard pressed against her chest. Just remove the pole and place it in the truck, she said. Be careful with the grass. I don't want him claiming property damage. The older worker looked at her. Ma'am, are you sure he knows about this? Linda's face tightened. He has received multiple notices. That's not what I asked, the man said. Linda lowered her clipboard. You were hired for a job, not a debate. Across the street, Sophie Bennett held her phone behind the blinds and kept recording. Her hands were shaking. She had never done anything like this before. She was not the kind of girl who liked drama, but something about seeing those men standing in Arthur's yard felt wrong in a way she could not ignore. She remembered her grandfather. He had served in Vietnam. After he died, most people forgot him fast. At the funeral, Sophie had watched men fold his flag and hand it to her grandmother. That flag had sat on their mantle until the day her grandmother moved into assisted living. To Sophie, Arthur's flag was not just cloth either. It was somebody's memory. The young worker loosened the bolts at the base of the pole. The metal made a sharp crying sound as it shifted. Linda looked up and down the street, probably hoping more neighbors would come outside and see that she was serious. A few did. Mrs. Delgado from the Blue House stepped onto her porch with one hand over her mouth. Dale Foster, the HOA treasurer, stood near his garage pretending to water a plant that was already soaked. Karen Whitcomb watched from her kitchen window. Nobody stopped it. Nobody wanted to be Linda's next target. When the pole finally tilted, Sophie felt her stomach drop. The flag slid halfway down as the men struggled to control the weight. For one terrible second, it nearly touched the ground. The older worker caught it before it fell. "Hold up," he snapped at the younger man. "Don't let it hit the dirt." Linda rolled her eyes. "Just get it done." Sophie zoomed in on Linda's face. The older worker carefully unclipped the flag and folded it the best he could. Not perfectly, but with respect. Then he set it gently on Arthur's porch chair. Linda noticed. "I said put everything in the truck." The man looked at her. "The pole, yes. The flag, no." Linda stared at him like she could not believe someone she hired had spoken back. Then she stepped onto Arthur's porch herself, picked up the folded flag between two fingers, and dropped it on the small table beside his empty coffee cup. "There," she said. "Happy?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She kept recording. When Arthur returned from the VA clinic a little after noon, the street was too quiet. He noticed it before he pulled into his driveway. The space above his yard looked wrong. For 11 years, his eyes had always found the flag before he turned off the engine. It was a habit, a small comfort, a sign that home was still home. But now there was only sky. Arthur parked slowly. He sat in the truck for a moment, both hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield. Then he got out. The folded flag was on the porch table, but the pole was gone. The rope was gone. The brass hook Margaret had bought from a small hardware store was gone too. Arthur walked across the grass and stopped at the torn patch of dirt. He did not bend down. He did not yell. He just stood there with his medical papers in his hand, while the summer heat pressed down on his shoulders. Linda was still across the street, speaking to Dale Foster. When she saw Arthur, she crossed over with the slow confidence of someone waiting for an argument. "Mr. Miles," she said, "the violation has been corrected." Arthur turned his head slowly. "You came onto my property while I was gone." Linda held up a paper. Under HOA Enforcement Authority, the association may correct unresolved exterior violations after proper notice. That flagpole was mine, and it violated the standards. Arthur's voice stayed low. "You took something that belonged to my wife." For the first time, Dale looked uncomfortable. Linda did not. "Your wife is not the issue here." Arthur flinched like she had slapped him. Mrs. Delgado gasped from her porch. Even Dale looked down at the sidewalk. Linda realized she had gone too far, but pride would not let her step back. "I mean," she said quickly, "personal history does not change the rule." Arthur stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the folded flag from the table. His hands trembled as he pressed it against his chest. "I gave this neighborhood 20 years of peace," he said. "I never asked any of you for anything." Linda's voice hardened. "And the neighborhood gave you years of patience. This matter is closed." Arthur looked at the torn grass again. "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." He went inside and closed the door. Linda stood there for a second, almost smiling, as if she believed she had won. But across the street, Sophie was already saving the video to 3 different places, because her grandfather had once told her, "When people with power act ugly, write it down or record it. They always deny it later." Inside the house, Arthur placed the flag on the dining table. That table had not been used for dinner since Margaret died. Most days, Arthur ate alone in the kitchen with the television low in the background. But now he pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat like he was attending a meeting with ghosts. He touched the edge of the flag. "I'm sorry, Maggie," he whispered. Then he went to the bedroom. From under the bed, he pulled out an old wooden box with scratches on the lid and a small brass latch. Margaret had called it his war and worry box because he kept everything inside it that hurt too much to look at every day. Arthur opened it. Inside were medals, old letters, photographs, a folded program from Margaret's funeral, and a brown folder tied with string. He lifted the folder out carefully. On the front, in Margaret's neat handwriting, were 4 words: "For when they forget." Arthur sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, his breathing became heavy. Then he opened the folder. There were old property papers inside, county forms, a survey map, a letter from the original developer of Cedar Hollow, and one signed agreement from years before most of the newer board members had even moved in. Arthur read the first page, then the second. Then he stopped at Margaret's handwritten note clipped to the back. His eyes became wet, but his face changed. The tiredness did not disappear, but something stronger rose underneath it. Arthur picked up his phone and called a number he had not called in almost 3 years. A man answered after the 4th ring. "Tom Reeves." Arthur cleared his throat. "Tom, it's Arthur Miles." There was a pause. "Art? My God. I haven't heard your voice in a long time. I need a favor. You name it." Arthur looked toward the front window, where the empty space in his yard still showed through the curtains. "I need you to look at some old county records," Arthur said. "And I need to know if the promise Margaret made still holds." Tom's voice became serious. "What happened?" Arthur looked at the folded flag on the dining table. "The HOA took my flag." The silence on the other end changed. It became heavy. Then Tom said, "Do not talk to them again without me." That evening, Sophie came to Arthur's door. She held her phone in both hands and looked nervous enough to run away. Arthur opened the door slowly. "Sophie, I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Miles." "You're not bothering me." She swallowed. "I saw what happened today." Arthur looked down. "A lot of people saw." "No," Sophie said. "I mean, I recorded it." Arthur looked up. She held out her phone. "I recorded all of it. Mrs. Carver telling them to take it. Recoriker, asking if you knew. Her saying your wife wasn't the issue. Everything." Arthur did not take the phone at first. His eyes softened. "Why would you do that?" Sophie looked past him at the folded flag on the table. "My grandpa would have wanted someone to." Arthur's face broke in a way he tried to hide. He nodded and stepped aside. "Come in, sweetheart." But before Sophie could enter, a black SUV pulled up in front of Arthur's house. Linda Carver stepped out with a man in a suit Arthur did not recognize. The man carried a folder. Linda pointed toward Arthur's house and said something under her breath. Arthur stood in the doorway, Sophie behind him, and watched them walk up the path. Linda smiled. "Mr. Miles," she said, "since you've chosen to escalate this, the HOA attorney is here to explain what happens next." Arthur looked at the man's folder. Then he looked back at the old wooden box sitting open on his hallway table. And for the first time all day, Arthur almost smiled. Linda Carver stood on Arthur's porch like she owned the boards beneath her shoes. The man beside her adjusted his tie and opened his folder. He was younger than Arthur expected, maybe in his late 30s, with polished shoes and the tired face of someone who had been dragged into a neighborhood fight he did not fully understand. "Mr. Miles," he said, "my name is Gregory Walsh. I represent the Cedar Hollow Homeowners Association." Arthur nodded once. "Then you should know they came onto my property while I was away." Gregory glanced at Linda. Linda lifted her chin. After repeated notices, Arthur looked at Sophie, then back at the lawyer. "And did your client tell you the flagpole had been there for 11 years? Gregory paused. Linda's eyes flickered. "That is not relevant," she said. Arthur stepped back from the doorway. "Come inside." Linda looked surprised. "We're not here for a social visit." "No," Arthur said softly. "You're here because you think I'm too old to understand a threat." Sophie stood near the hallway table, holding her phone tight. The old wooden box sat open beside her. Inside, the papers waited like they had been sleeping for years. Gregory entered first. Linda followed, but she looked around Arthur's house with that same judging expression she used at meetings. Her eyes moved over the framed army photograph, Margaret's picture on the mantel, and the folded flag on the dining table. For once, she said nothing. Arthur lifted the brown folder from the wooden box and placed it in front of Gregory. "Before you explain what happens next," Arthur said, "read that." Gregory opened the folder. At first, he looked bored. Then his eyebrows pulled together. He turned one page, then another. Linda grew impatient. Gregory, we don't need to entertain old paperwork. The board has enforcement authority. Gregory did not answer. Arthur watched him closely. The lawyer reached the survey map and stopped. Then he looked up. Mr. Miles, he said slowly, where did you get this? My wife kept it. This is a recorded easement. Linda frowned. A what? Gregory did not look at her. It appears part of Mr. Miles's front lot was excluded from certain HOA architectural restrictions because of an agreement made with the original developer. Arthur's voice stayed calm. That small flag area was dedicated as a memorial space after my wife helped organize the neighborhood's first Veterans Fund. Linda blinked. That's ridiculous. Arthur picked up Margaret's handwritten note. My wife raised money for this clubhouse after the developer ran out of funds. She got neighbors to donate. She organized bake sales, yard sales, church dinners, everything. The developer signed this agreement because she asked for one thing in return. Gregory looked at the paper again. Arthur swallowed hard. A permanent right to keep a flag memorial at our home. The room went silent. Linda's face changed from confidence to panic, but only for a second. Then pride rushed back in. That cannot possibly override the current board. Gregory closed the folder slowly. Linda, did you review the property file before ordering removal? She folded her arms. The violation was obvious. That's not what I asked. Sophie looked at Arthur. Arthur said nothing. Gregory's jaw tightened. Did you authorize a crew to remove a structure from his property without legal review? Linda's voice sharpened. We had authority under the covenants. Gregory looked toward the folded flag. And the flag? Linda did not answer. That was when Sophie stepped forward. I have a video, she said. Linda turned so fast her earrings moved. Excuse me? Sophie's voice shook, but she did not back down. I recorded what happened. Linda's eyes became cold. Young lady, recording people without permission can get you in trouble. Sophie looked scared. Arthur moved beside her. Gregory raised one hand. Linda, stop talking. That made the room even quieter. Sophie tapped her phone and played the video. Linda's voice filled Arthur's living room. Just remove the pole and place it in the truck. Then the worker's voice. Ma'am, are you sure he knows about this? Then Linda again. He has received multiple notices. The video continued. It showed the pole tilting, the worker protecting the flag from touching the ground, Linda stepping onto Arthur's porch, and later, Linda saying, Your wife is not the issue here. Arthur looked away. Gregory rubbed his forehead. Linda's mouth opened, but no words came out. The next HOA meeting had more people than any meeting Cedar Hollow had ever seen. Neighbors stood along the walls. Some waited outside near the clubhouse windows. Mrs. Delgado sat in the front row with a tissue in her hand. Dale Foster would not look at Linda. Karen Whitcomb kept whispering to her husband. Arthur sat quietly beside Sophie and her mother. On the table in front of the board were three things. Margaret's agreement, the county record printout Tom Reeves had helped Arthur get, and a letter from Gregory Walsh advising the HOA to settle the matter immediately. Linda tried to open the meeting like usual. This is a misunderstanding that has been exaggerated, she said. A man in the back called out, You took a veteran's flag. Linda tapped the microphone. Please follow meeting rules. Arthur slowly stood. The room became quiet. He did not speak loudly. I did not want this, he said. I did not want cameras, lawyers, arguments, or neighbors choosing sides. I only wanted to raise my flag in the morning and remember my wife. Linda looked down. Arthur continued. Margaret believed this neighborhood could be good. She believed rules should protect people, not punish them. That is why she kept these papers. She knew one day somebody might forget. He placed her handwritten note on the table. For when they forget. Mrs. Delgado started crying. Sophie wiped her face. Then Gregory stood and announced that the HOA would return the flagpole, repair the lawn, cancel all fines, issue a written apology, and review Linda's decision to authorize removal. But the room was not finished. Dale Foster cleared his throat. I make a motion for Linda Carver to step down as president, effective immediately. Linda's head snapped up. You can't do that. Karen Whitcomb, pale and nervous, raised her hand. I second it. The vote was not close. Linda walked out before the meeting ended, her face red, her binder pressed against her chest like a shield that no longer worked. The next morning, Arthur's flagpole was back. But this time he did not raise the flag alone. Neighbors gathered quietly along the sidewalk. Some brought coffee. Some brought flowers for Margaret's garden. The older worker who had refused to throw the flag into the truck came too, holding his cap in his hands. Sophie stood beside Arthur. "My grandpa's flag is in storage," she said softly. "I think my mom and I are going to put it back on the mantle." Arthur smiled at her. He'd like that. Then he raised the flag. Slowly. Carefully. The cloth lifted into the Texas morning air, bright against the blue sky. When it reached the top, Arthur tied the rope and stepped back. For the first time in a long time, he did not feel completely alone, and on the porch behind him, the old wooden box sat open in the sunlight, with Margaret's note resting on top, for when they forget.